get your undergrad in Russian studies?
Louisiana State University.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. I studied up at DeKalb at Northern Illinois. I have my master's in Russian history and worked with W. Bruce Lincoln. So it brought me back to the olden days. But it wasn't that long ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I got that degree, what, it's 22 years ago? Yeah.
Not that long ago. In time. But you, military,
Yes.
started with, or worked through the military?
Yeah, let me do this.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, I joined the military in 1986 for money for college, and I've been doing it ever since. Started at the very bottom, as low as you can be, the lowest private on the totem pole, and I'll make lieutenant colonel next year. So I worked all the way up.
Well,
26 years.
And you're still
Still on active duty.
Wow. So with our current situation, we had to go.
I've done 2 combat tours in Iraq, but I have not been in Afghanistan.
away from the airport.
Great, you don't.
I volunteered for it. They sent me to the Pentagon instead.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Pentagon was worse.
You know, I mean,
Pentagon was worse.
I don't know. That's. What do you think? I mean, I know we got to read the book because you talk about our current state of affairs, our current diplomatic situation, strategy. As an American, as somebody coming up on an election, trying to elect someone, what kind of things, foreign policy-wise, things that we should be questioning or keeping an eye to?
It doesn't really matter. U.S. foreign policy is virtually unchanged since the end of World War II. Across administrations, it doesn't matter which political party.
actually,
And that's because our foreign policy is driven by what we call enduring national interests, or core national interests. And they're generally the same from administration to administration. Security of the homeland, it's a stable economic order, it's big picture stuff like that. So if you really look at U.S. foreign policy, it's almost unchanged, no matter who's been in the White House. And that's why you saw virtually no difference between George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And there's been virtually no difference at all. So, you have to kind of ignore the campaign rhetoric, because in the end, it really doesn't matter. So, but what I attempted to do here was the media and the government both portray a very simplified picture of what is a really complex problem. We talk about how there's a war on terror and we're focused on Al-Qaeda. Well, Al-Qaeda was a centralized group led by a couple of guys, very tight-knit. After 9/11, that ceased to exist. It really did. They did what they set out to do, and the pressure we put on them after 9/11 forced that organization to essentially disintegrate. And what the government actually calls it now is a term called AQAM. It's Al-Qaeda and Associated Movements, because what they've done is they've recognized that the original organization splintered apart because of pressure from us. And it's really now just a big global network of regional and local cells. That's why you see them talk about the group in Yemen now, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, or there's one in Western Africa, and there's one in Somalia. It's this group. They all share the same big ideology, but they're not as connected as they were before. And it's because being that connected presents a really easy target, so they disperse. And the point of the book is to explain that, how it's changed since 9/11, the nature of the threat has changed since 9/11, and how we go about managing it. And that's through what we call the elements of national power: diplomatic, information, military, economic, intelligence, law enforcement. And so I walked through with the chapters each of those elements of national power and how the government uses those to really manage the problem, because terrorism isn't going to go away. But you can manage it to the point where it causes the least possible disruption to daily lives. And so that's the point of the book, is to explain, look, it's not as simple as it's portrayed. Here's the way it's changed since 9/11, and here's how we're going about managing it. And then it wraps up with, over the next 10 years, where are the areas around the world where we're most likely to be engaged, and walks through a series of countries that are probably going to be our focus.
I would, reading the book yet, I would imagine Korea.
Korea's covered. Yemen is a huge problem. Yemen has almost 70% of the population under the age of 30. So they're very young, high unemployment rate, and it's the first country in the world scheduled to run out of water within the next decade. And they're just going to run out of water completely, and they're going to run out of oil, which is their primary source of income. So it's a failed state waiting to happen. And it's already got a presence of Islamic extremists there, and the conditions are being created to just have the whole thing fall apart. But Yemen, Somalia, North Korea, the biggest threat isn't really nuclear weapons. It's that the government needs money because of international isolation. And so they sell technology, and that once you start doing that and passing out very advanced technology, it's going to get in the wrong hands. So it's the proliferation threat that's the real problem for North Korea. But it also talks about Saudi Arabia, and I even look at some of the threats within the homeland here. But there's a series of countries. It talks a little bit about the Islamic presence in Southeast Asia too, in the Philippines and Indonesia, and what's really a success story out there, and how the Philippine government and the Indonesian government, with assistance from us, has largely eliminated their Islamic terrorist threat, and so it kind of serves as a model for how we can go about applying that to other areas of the world. So.
As you were talking, it took me back to, studying imperialism back. I mean, as you said earlier on, it hasn't changed from administration, and I mean that goes back to Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, the whole, making those stable economies and going in there. So. Interesting stuff, though. Interesting and not probably ever changing.
Not radically, no. There'll be subtle changes. There'll be small changes and shifts that go back and forth, but largely the same.
But keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And are you planning a sequel or another?
I've started to work on another topic, but it's focused more on here within the United States, and different scenarios that can create problems for us. For example, the gunman at Fort Hood. There have been various plots to blow up subway systems and bridges, and different infrastructure targets that could be hit very easily. And what I've done is I've used, in this new manuscript I'm working on, using examples from around the world, the Madrid train bombings in Spain, the London bombings, suicide attacks in Israel, and how those could actually happen here. And I talk about how there's actually a much larger presence of Islamist terrorists in the United States and Central America and South America than most people realize, including Hezbollah, which most people think of a threat to Israel, but they have a very large presence in South America and Central America, and have even made their way up into Mexico. So the potential is there to wreak havoc here if the opportunity presented itself. So we'll walk through a bunch of scenarios using real examples from around the world that could happen here. It's not pleasant stuff.
It's not, and again, it goes back to that theme of having good information. And we as a public getting to that good information and using it. So, but wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot of food for thought.
It is. It's a complex topic.
Yeah. Wow. And you don't realize how complex, and you deal with it every day in your job. I mean, thank you.